Yeah, so of course the main losses for USC and the DB side, of course, Jalen Smith, he's probably going to get drafted. He was very good last year for USC. He had a really nice interception that Nebraska game. I remember. I think he had two that game. He might have. I don't know. He had at least one in that game. And then you lose Achille Arnold, and so you have to bring in transfers. USC did that. They bring in Bishop Fitzgerald, DJ Harvey. They have some guys who were young last year move up a little bit. And so, what are your initial thoughts just seeing this DB group and how it fares in the Big Ten, just right off the depth chart itself?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it a little pre going live. It is an interesting group because at the top, there is a lot of just really experienced guys who have played 4 years, who are coming into their 5th year. You look at Harvey, you look at Fitzgerald, but behind them on the depth chart, it's a lot of guys who are unproven. You look at the Marcellus Williams, you look at Marquise Gallegos of the world. It's a lot of guys who are unproven and need to show what they can do. They were highly recruited out of high school. Time to prove it.
Yeah, and USC's passing defense in terms of yards last year was 98th in the country, I believe. And so, they were winning a lot of games. They're winning all their games really based on the offense doing enough to, be serviceable and sort of, the defense holding its own. But they were still giving up a lot of passing yards in a Big Ten conference that, has good quarterbacks, of course. But, you're playing against a team like Washington. You should be containing a guy like Will Rogers, right? I mean, that's the reality. Maybe you get a free pass against Drew Aller and Tyler Warren on an offense. But like I said, and I correct myself, 1 interception in the Nebraska game for Jalen Smith, 1 in the Maryland game. So you had 2 on the year. And you bring in guys like DJ Harvey, Bishop Fitzgerald, who have interceptions last year. They have a lot of pass breakups. And so, I think really – for USC, I think it kind of moved. They move into a era of their program where they were relying on, sort of serviceable defense and high powered offense to, win games. Now you bring in some really good coaches, and you're losing some pieces this year, like Achille Arnold, who was very good, but he also dealt with injuries, and then Jalen Smith. And you replace that with guys who maybe don't seem as like skilled on paper. But again, I mean, I think both Bishop Fitzgerald and DJ Harvey on top of Kamari Ramsey returning. And that was a big question. But DJ Harvey last year, 4 interceptions. He went to San Jose State, of course, maybe a little bit easier competition, especially in the quarterback department. I mean, the Mountain West was not a great quarterback conference last year. But still, I mean, he had a lot of tackles, 40 solo tackles on the year. I mean, not bad for a guy coming out of San Jose State. Bishop Fitzgerald, 3 interceptions, 8 pass breakups. Again, in an ACC conference that's not super quarterback heavy. However, he did, play well against Kyle McCord in Syracuse. Also had to play against Nico Iamalieva and Tennessee. And so, it's interesting to look at where these guys come from. A little bit weaker maybe from a conference standpoint. But then Kamari Ramsey, he had 1 pick last year. He had 5 pass breakups. But Terrence and I were talking about this before the show started. He's a guy that does more than what shows on the stat sheet. He's a guy that hits hard. He can force breakups using his physicality when he lowers his shoulder. Kamari Ramsey is an elite player, probably an early draft pick next year if he can keep it up. And then you have some more depth guys like Marcellus Williams, didn't play much last year as a redshirt. And then Prophet Brown played more in the nickel. Of course, we saw a lot of injuries on the DB side last year. And then, even going further into the depth chart, a guy like Braylon Conley, who has a lot of high upside. He's one of those Southern recruits that Lincoln Riley recruited a lot, the past couple of years. He didn't play at all last year, but he could slot in maybe in the corner at some point. So, and then Kennedy Urlacher as well. He's coming in.
We got to mention Kennedy Urlacher. I mean, past couple of days, that is a huge addition to the secondary. That guy is exciting, super quick, good open field tackler. Only reason I think he didn't see the field more last year, that Notre Dame secondary was incredibly good. That's really the main reason for that. So I think I'm excited to see what he can do. I've seen he can play in the nickelback. He plays safety a decent amount. That's like his primary position. So I'm excited to see what he can do on the field. That's a fun player to add in the pool.
Yeah, and he, he's not the biggest guy. Like, he's not like a a towering force. He's not like a freak athlete per se, but he's so logical. He's a logical player. He's great at ball tracking. He, I think is going to be a stout pair with the DB group, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, he's coming over from Notre Dame, where you're getting coached very well on that defensive side. We see Xavier Watts. He's going to be probably a first-round draft pick. They had plenty of depth last year at the safety position. And so, a guy like Urlacher wasn't necessarily, like you said, getting as much of the spotlight last year. But again, he had a very promising season. Of course, USC brings in Chad Bowden, general manager, and he has ties to Notre Dame, so that definitely had a part in it. But I'm really excited for Kennedy Urlacher. He had 7 solo tackles last year, only 1 pass breakup, no interceptions. But again, he's a guy that, you look at his game log, he wasn't getting the snaps that other guys were getting. He didn't play in every game. He actually did play against USC, had a tackle in that game. Again, he had 1 pass breakup that came against Purdue. And so it's been a limited sample size for him. He was only a freshman last year, but for a freshman, I mean, very impressive to see, sort of his mechanical work on the defensive side. Maybe didn't have the stats necessarily, but he also wasn't getting the snaps. And he also had to compete with guys like Xavier Watts, who are, of course, very
one of, if not the best safeties in this upcoming NFL draft. I think we should mention this. Christian Pierce Jr. It's an interesting question where he will be at. He's going to be really competing a lot, obviously, with the Urlachers, with all those guys for the safety position, with Bishop Fitzgerald, excuse me. It'll be interesting to see if he gets on the field much. I think it's super possible we see the safeties change in and out throughout the season. Correct me if I'm wrong, especially at that strong safety position, just because there's obviously experience there, but Pierce has seen the field a lot less than Fitzgerald has in their collegiate careers, obviously at a different team, but it will be a little bit difficult for him to get on the field, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, the strong safety position, well, really the whole safety group as a whole, not a ton of depth there, right? Like you lose Achille Arnold, you have 2 true freshmen in Treston Castro, Kendarius Reddick. They're probably going to be the 3rd or 4th safeties at the respective free and strong safeties. Do you think Kennedy Urlacher is the starting strong safety on day 1 over Bishop Fitzgerald, who's a redshirt senior?
I don't think you can confidently say that. I mean, obviously he's young. He's so young, and I feel like it's more like I could totally see him on the field a lot more than I think he would get at Notre Dame. That's probably why he transferred. But I don't think he'll be the starter from day 1. I think when you have a guy like Fitzgerald who has seen the field a lot more and is just that much more experience, he will be the starter from day 1. Does not mean that guys like Christian Pierce or Kennedy Urlacher can get on the field, though.
Yeah, I mean, the depth, we'll talk about other positions in other weeks. But, we saw USC lose some players on the DB side. We already talked about a couple of them. But again, I mean, I think, and Terrence and I were also talking about, before the show started, that 2026 makes for an even more important year because we're not only going to see a big recruiting class potentially come in, but also because we're going to have the chance to see this year how some of the younger guys, like Braylon Conley, can sort of adapt, but not even just on the corner side, like Marquise Gallegos, Kadarius Reddick. We saw a lot of injuries last year on the DB side. That allowed for guys like Marcellus Williams to come in, to Carlos Nicholson, Prophet Brown. And I honestly thought there was some good upside there from those guys. I think Prophet Brown is kind of underrated. I think he's a guy who, if you see injuries or maybe, if Lincoln Riley wants to go in a different direction with Danton Lynn, I think we could definitely see him coming in and getting some good snaps, maybe not just at the nickel, but maybe a bigger role as well. I don't know. What do you think of the depth at the corner and safety positions, maybe particularly the safety? Because I think there's a lot more depth at the corner positions, but what do you see there at the safety?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned it before. I think so. Obviously, the free safety position that's shut down. It's Kamari Ramsey's job. It's one of the best safeties in the country by far, in my opinion. I don't even think I'm biased saying that. He had a fantastic year. His 2 years, he's really seen the field at UCLA and USC. He's been fantastic. In my opinion, easy first, either day 1, day 2 pick. But there's a lot less depth, as you mentioned, at that safety position. It's interesting where they'll go. I'm just kind of looking at it right now. I could see Gallegos maybe getting snaps at the strong safety, seeing if there's injuries, things like that. That strong safety position, it's not at all wrapped up at all, though.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then, I mean, we talk about depth. I mean, the cornerback group is a lot younger. This is a young team, right? Like we've talked about it last week. As we see, yeah, I mean, Fitzgerald, I agree. I think he'll start. And you're gonna have, maybe the schedule earlier on, a chance to sort of put those guys out, as we've seen. We talked about the schedule last week. You have a couple of free games in there, Purdue included, maybe. So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see. And like you said, the free safety position, you have Marquise Gallegos as the backup to, Kamari Ramsey. I think he could learn a lot under Kamari Ramsey. And it'll be interesting to see as well, because Kamari Ramsey's a redshirt junior. He has a lot of experience. He's probably has his, eyes set on the draft. And so he could be a really good mentor to some of those guys. But the cornerback position's young, right? Because, Marcellus Williams could very well be the starting cornerback, at least on the right side for USC, one of the starting cornerbacks. And he's only a redshirt freshman, right? So, that is a kind of a question mark. DeCarlos Nicholson is a little bit older. We just haven't seen much from him. He's been injured. And then, on the other side, of course, DJ Harvey will probably lock that down, but also young, right? Because you have, after him, it's Braylon Conley and then Tristan Castro. Both those guys are freshmen. So I think at the cornerback position, maybe less so than the safety position, you see it's a good group, but if you're you're one injury away from having to put in a first-year player, which isn't a problem, but it's just something to think about in the sense that this is a young group and they're going to go into places like Oregon, like Notre Dame, and have to deal with, kind of an opposing offense that can do a lot of things. But I want to talk a little bit, maybe open this up a little bit beyond USC, because, I think for the Trojans this year, we talked last week about the schedule. You're playing, you're a little luckier because you're playing a slate of teams on your schedule with weaker quarterbacks across the board, right? You're not playing Penn State this year. You'll play Bryce Underwood maybe, and he's supposed to be very good, but he's a wild card. It could be Mikey Keene, right? You're playing Oregon. Dante Moore is kind of a wild card. So how do you think that sort of does that, like, how do you see that sort of translating to the defense, especially in the secondary?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about it already, but they weren't a great pass defense last year, obviously 98th in the country against, it's not a great passing conference in the Big Ten. It was fine. Obviously placing against like Drew Allers and the Tyler Warrens is different, but it wasn't a great pass defense. So I think playing against guys who haven't gotten that much experience, Will and D just mentioned, Underwood was shaky in the spring game. You got to take advantage of the guys who have gotten less snaps at quarterback. You got to take advantage of the Underwoods. You have to take advantage of the Dante Moores because they will make mistakes. That's the reality, especially a freshman like Underwood. I'm not going to say playing in a difficult environment in USC, but playing away is definitely a lot harder, obviously. So I think you have to really take advantage of that. And I think this team, the defense, will make strides, especially the DBs, especially because a lot of these guys, they sat last year, they didn't play, and they learned. That is really key. That you don't see that a lot happening in college athletics anymore. So I think it's really important that a lot of these guys sat and learned the defense.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at the schedule, because we talked about it last week, you host Michigan State. A guy like Aiden Childs is going to make mistakes, right? He's a guy that forces a lot of balls. Like that's free opportunities for not just guys like Kamari Ramsey, but depth players and some of the younger freshmen we talked about to step up. I think the litmus test will be like on the road against Illinois, facing off against Luke Altmaier on the road. That's going to be really tough. I don't think I don't have doubts that they can get it done there, USC, but again, it's going to be hard. Also, we didn't talk about this last week because it hadn't happened yet. Nico Iamaleava going to UCLA. That's the last game of the year. Again, I don't think he's as good as a quarterback as $4 million suggests, or however much he was getting at Tennessee.
UCLA definitely didn't give him $4 million.
Definitely not, but he got that much at Tennessee, or he wanted that much at Tennessee, and he didn't get it. But the point is, that makes UCLA a little bit better team, undeniably. I mean, they go from Joey Aguilar to, you know,
No disrespect to Joey Aguilar, but come on.